Tokenization is the process of creating a digital record of asset ownership. This is uniquely different from methods before because of the unique advantages of using a blockchain, which are discussed in the previous module. By creating this digital record, you basically bring the asset online to a much broader array of use cases, like financial use cases of trading, collateralization, and more. Because tokenization is all about assets, let's first start by separating assets into two categories: digital native assets and physical or paper-based assets. Digital native assets are assets that begin their life cycle in digital form. Examples of these types of assets could include digital financial assets like Bitcoin or tokenized Bitcoin, or even digital media assets like digital art or digital music. Physical assets are straightforward. These are assets that begin their life cycle in physical or paper-based form. These could include art, carbon credits, real estate, commodities, biological assets, interest in investment funds, or even equity ownership. What gives a token value? Tokens, again, are just digital representations of an asset. So to answer this question, we have to go back and just revisit how we define assets and their underlying values. Robert Greer, back in an influential 1997 paper in the Journal for Portfolio Management, defined assets into three superclasses: capital assets, consumable transformable assets, and store of value assets. Some assets, like gold, might even have features that overlap across multiple superclasses. For example, gold is both consumable and a store of value inflation hedge for some investors. Greer defined these asset superclasses as follows. A capital asset is an ongoing source of something of value. So for example, stocks can provide a future stream of dividend payments, or bonds can provide a future stream of interest payments and principal repayment. A consumable transformable asset is an asset that you can consume or one that you can transform into another asset. It has value, but it does not provide an ongoing stream of value. Typical examples are physical commodities. The valuation methodology for consumable transformable assets is much different compared to that for capital assets. With commodities, you use supply and demand considerations to develop pricing models. With capital assets, you use discounted cash flows. The third asset superclass, store of value assets, cannot be consumed, nor can they be valued based on discounted cash flows. These include assets like currencies or fine art, which investors may purchase and hold as a way to store their wealth, which creates the underlying demand and price for the asset. So with that background covered, let's refocus back on tokenized assets. I want to cover how different types of physical and digital assets are being tokenized today and what the opportunities are. These assets include precious metals, stocks, debt, commodities, real estate, carbon credits, balance sheet assets, and biological assets. Starting first with gold. For the past several years, we've seen companies like Pax experimenting with the tokenized issuance of gold. The way it works is that a trust company, Pax, allows holders of gold to custody their gold in secure vaults operated by Brinks. And then they create tokens that represent ownership of that gold. For example, if you owned a 400-ounce gold bar in their vault, you could tokenize it into 400 individual fractions, which you then hold in a digital wallet, or you could sell to other parties. This type of tokenization is considered a physical to digital tokenization, where the original asset is physical or paper-based. In these types of tokenizations, it is critical that trusted parties are used to attest to the immobilization of the physical asset when it is tokenized, so that token holders can be assured that the underlying asset cannot be moved, altered, or otherwise transferred. In this example, investors benefit by gaining exposure to gold in an easy way, without the complication, expense of buying gold futures ETFs or paying for vault costs. Moving on to equities, this again is another example of a physical to digital transformation. It's actually paper-based. In this case, we've seen examples where a traditional brokerage may buy shares in stocks like Tesla, Apple, or GameStop and store them with a custodian. Next, they tokenize these shares by allowing them to be tradable as an asset on crypto exchanges or via blockchain ledgers. In some ways, this is similar to the depository receipt, which enables cross-listings of traditional equities in different jurisdictions. The advantage to a prospective investor is the ability to trade these shares 24 hours, 7 days a week depending on the capabilities of the trading venue. For tokenized bonds, we've seen many financial institutions actually directly issue new bonds to blockchains such as Ethereum. In Europe, for example, several banks have already issued offerings in the tens of millions of euros using tokenized bond offerings that were fully subscribed. In the commodity space, we've seen examples where oil and gas traders have considered tokenizing the title or ownership to goods stored in either warehouses or in ships. This creates real benefits in trade finance transactions, where title transfer of the goods upon delivery and the subsequent execution of payments no longer have to wait for transfers of paper-based documentation, like bills of lading. But all this can be done digitally using blockchain-based records. This streamlining of processing time creates real benefits for market participants and financial institutions in this value chain. Real estate has been one of the most active areas within asset tokenization. We've seen multiple ways of structuring tokenized real estate assets. One method has been to tokenize individual pieces of property. Another method has been to tokenize funds that hold multiple pieces of property. Either way, the key advantages to the investor are that they A, have a lower minimum threshold to buying into the asset because it has been fractionalized, and B, their ownership of the asset is much more liquid because they can trade it on secondary markets that support digital token trading. Another asset type, carbon credits, are well known for existing in a fragmented market. That is, many carbon credit systems exist on top of centralized registries that may be jurisdiction specific, similar to what you see in the global equities markets. We've seen projects from South America where carbon credits that represent 1 ton of carbon, captured and not yet released, were tokenized on the Ethereum blockchain so that trading of these assets could extend beyond the boundaries of the centralized registry where those credits were originally issued. Investors or companies who wish to offset their carbon emissions can buy these token credits and then retire them, which means that the token or credit is effectively removed from the system as an offset. There are other types of tokenized assets that warrant mentioning. Bitcoin, the world's largest digital native asset, has actually also been tokenized into an asset named WBTC, which allows it to be tradable and usable on the Ethereum network for many different types of decentralized financial services. Separately, back to the physical assets, we've seen cases of balance sheet assets like accounts receivables invoices being tokenized so that they can be more easily sold or traded to financial companies who want to take on that risk. In addition, other unique balance sheet assets like biological assets, which are living things like cattle, can be digitized by adding environmental or location sensors in the field, and then tokenized so that the asset owners can more easily sell or use these assets for collateral as necessitated by their working capital requirements. So with that, I hope that gives you a great overview of what can be tokenized. In our next section, we'll be taking you through how these deals actually work. How do you actually tokenize something?